All right, let's begin with the forest fires raging in the Amazon and what Brazil's president is saying now. He's saying the situation is under control, but there are conflicting messages coming from his office. Earlier, Jair Bolsonaro rejected more than $26 million pledged by the G7 due to an ongoing feud with France's president. But now, just moments ago, a spokesperson says Brazil welcomes all foreign aid with a stipulation that the country decides how to use the assistance. Now, Bolsonaro faced criticism for making the offer of aid personal by his initial refusal. See, Emmanuel Macron had criticized Brazil's commitment to fight climate change, took Bolsonaro to task for insulting his wife. That led to Bolsonaro demanding an apology from Macron. The Brazilian president also accused G7 member nations of treating his country like a colony. Meanwhile, the fires ravaging the region have been record-breaking. Environmentalists and politicians from around the world warning that the amount pledged is not nearly enough and that it's a dire situation. Freelance reporter Sam Cowie is with us live from Sao Paulo. Sam, let's start with this business about the aid. Is Bolsonaro accepting it or not?
Well, this is very much about damage control. Brazil's international image with these forest fires is becoming increasingly tarnished, and Mr. Bolsonaro's antagonistic approach towards the aid, this game of egos that he'll only accept it if there's an apology. You know, he's been antagonistic in the past weeks to Angela Merkel when she suspended, when Germany suspended its payments towards the Amazon Fund, which, you know, contributes to projects that combat deforestation. He said that, well, you can use that money to reforest Germany. With Norway, he said, well, when they suspended some of their payments, he said, well, Norway, isn't that the country that hunts whales, that kills whales? So, you know, in the past week here, we've seen members of the agricultural community, and we're not talking the kind of small time farmers that are setting these fires at the moment, or that are the illegal land grabbers that are setting these fires at the moment. We're talking, you know, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates of agriculture in Brazil. Agriculture is a real motor of the Brazilian economy here right now, especially since the country's still struggling to, you know, crawl out of the crisis that it's been in since 2015. And we've seen, you know, big time members of the agricultural community come forward and say, look, this is doing absolutely irreparable damage to Brazil's reputation as an agricultural producer. We're going to possibly suffer sanctions soon. We might lose the European market. You know, there's been a trade deal with the European Union, 20 years in the making, with the European Union and the South American trading bloc Mercosur. And right now, all of that looks in jeopardy. So this retraction by Mr. Bolsonaro right now, this is very much about damage control.
Explain what happened between he and Macron that led to this situation.
Well, it's an ongoing saga. Basically, this started, you know, months ago at the meeting in Osaka, Japan, where he also met with Angela Merkel. Where him and Macron, they had a bit of a misunderstanding over, basically Mr. Bolsonaro has been, his government has been criticized since the beginning of the year for his basically antagonistic stance towards the environment and especially indigenous people. He wants to open up indigenous lands for mining. He says that indigenous people in Brazil, they have too much land, and that essentially he's spun a bunch of these conspiracy theories that international NGOs and environmental NGOs in Brazil are all part of some big plot receiving money from abroad to basically, you know, stifle Brazil's development and make Brazilian products uncompetitive. So, I mean, what we've seen since then is just more of this back and forth between him and the French President Emmanuel Macron. And this kind of culminated the other night on social media when he was seen to have kind of endorsed an insult to the French president's wife on his social media account. He has, very denied that he made this insult or that he endorsed it at all. He walked away from reporters in the capital, Brasilia, today, saying this interview's over. I'm not answering any more questions on this. You know, and he's tried to make it clear that there wasn't an insult made to Macron's wife, but you know, this is a relationship, a troubled relationship that doesn't seem to find any solutions anytime soon. Mr. Bolsonaro has backed down from you know, saying that he will only accept the aid if there's an apology from Macron. He's backed down now, but you know, that seems like a very temporary solution to this to this situation.
Yeah, because we heard yesterday that he was in fact going to accept the money, and then today, not unless he got this apology, and tonight we're hearing that he's going to accept it again. While all of this is going on, fires are burning through the Amazon. What's the status?
Yeah, I mean, these fires, they continue to burn. The military, I've just come back from Rondônia, where some of the worst fires have been happening. You know, the military are on the ground, but things are moving very slowly. There's not really that many boots on the ground right now. There's an operation that started yesterday, and that will continue throughout this week to clamp down on environmental crimes, deforestation, and these fires, because of these of course, these fires are a direct result of deforestation and environmental crimes. This is people in the main, in the majority, that are essentially illegally clearing land, first by deforesting it, and then by letting the trees out to dry, taking the most precious trees out first to sell on the black market, and then from there, you know, the trees which, you know, you can't sell, they'll just leave them to dry out because it's very humid in the Amazon. August is the dry month. This is traditionally when we see the most amount of forest fires. But even for August, it's the highest amount of forest fires we've seen since at least 2010. And, you know, like I say, all of this is the result of deforestation. They're leaving these trees out on the ground and then burning them to clear the land to use for cattle grazing or for, you know, growing soy or other crops afterwards. And that's just the private properties. You know, there's also land grabbing going on a mass scale in indigenous lands, on protected forest units. And this is what the army and the armed forces, the military in Rondônia state, that's what they're really turning their attention to this week.
Okay, how are Brazilians feeling about what's going on? What do they think?
The overall opinion is, according to data polls that we've seen, even amongst Mr. Bolsonaro's supporters, is that basically Brazil should be doing more to protect the Amazon. Now, there are also, you know, it's a very polarized debate. There are lots of people inside Brazil that say, well, you know, it's our Amazon. If we want to open it up and develop it for mining, for agriculture, we should be able to do that. Mr. Bolsonaro often repeats the line that, you know, European countries, the United States, you know, Canada, these are countries that developed, you know, after they cut their forests down. Why should we have to maintain ours? And, you know, live in poverty? And that is, you know, an argument that definitely resonates in the region, in the Amazon region, where there's, you know, poverty is widespread, and the forests, you know, untold riches basically, you know, stay in the hands of very few people. But overall, we know from data polls taken recently that the large majority of the Brazilian public think that Mr. Bolsonaro's government, and that, you know, the government in general, should be doing much more to protect the Amazon, that it should collaborate with international aid, and that regardless of what their position on development of the Amazon is, that these fires are out of control and unacceptable and are tarnishing the image of the country.
Sam Cowie, freelance reporter in Sao Paulo tonight. Sam, thank you.
Thanks.